Don't boo them. No, please. First of all, they could never vote for Donald J. Trump. But they have been through the ringer so many times, brutalized by a system that they thought was for them because they worked hard for it. They went and served in the military for it. They gave and gave and gave to this country. And what the people of the Detroits and the Flints and the East St. Louises and the Gary, Indianas and every place else, what did they get in return? And they saw that even though their hearts were with the Democrats, the cavalry never came to save Flint, Michigan. The great poisoning of Flint that started back in 2013 and 2014 with a Republican governor. We begged, though, the Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. to please help us. Really, all you have to do is send in the Army Corps of Engineers to dig up the poison pipes and replace them. This isn't rocket science. We know how to dig up pipes, and we know how to replace them. And got nothing for it. And so 90,000, without talking to each other, show up to send a message. You didn't want to come and campaign in our state? You're our party. You wouldn't go to Wisconsin? You're our party. You're our only hope. Donald Trump isn't going to save us. Do you understand? I have come to believe, I used to boo too. Like, you have a responsibility to vote. This is not a democracy unless every citizen votes. In fact, if you say you're a citizen in a democracy, it implies automatically that you're an activist and a voter. Because if you don't vote, and if you're not active, the democracy ceases to exist. So 90,000 thought they'd send a message, mostly to the Democratic Party, that they were sick and tired of being sick and tired. The African American vote was down in Detroit, as it was down in Milwaukee, as it was down in Philly. What do these three states have in common? You've been lied to the media about why we lost in 16. It's not because we lost the white working class that Lunch Bucket Joe didn't come out and vote. We lost because these black cities of Flint and Detroit and Milwaukee and Philly, the despair, the utter despair, unless you've lived in people's shoes, you don't understand this. But I've come to believe now that when people say, I've had it, I can't take it, no, I'm not showing up anymore. They love their country. The largest party in America is the non-voter party, 100 million strong. And they are not apathetic. They are not people who don't give a damn. They are not stupid. They've just fucking had it. I'm sorry to say that. I want to respect Bernie, but I heard him say bullshit on TV this week that he wasn't going to take any more of it. So it's still, remember, it's still a PG-13 movie with 3 of the bombs. So that's my only one for tonight. But I say it only because I want you to understand that I believe these beloved Americans who love their country, who are patriotic, who have served their country, for them to have to not go and vote, it rips the guts out of them. They want to participate. They're Americans. They live in the greatest country on earth. They don't understand. They can't do this anymore. They can't subjugate themselves. It's humiliating. Our water's been poisoned for the last 2 years. Where are you? Democrats, where are you? We love you. I believe when they did that 90,000 showing up and leaving the top box blank, that's an act of civil disobedience. It's an act where, no, it's not the kind where they're going to get arrested. It's the kind where they've got to go home and feel shitty about themselves because they would want to vote. They do want to vote for president. But they couldn't do it anymore. They drank too much of the water. And it was the only way they could figure out. And the fact that they figured this out individually without getting together. Just that idea came to 90,000 people on its own. I was there. There was no discussion about it in the days or weeks leading up. They just did it because they needed to get the attention, especially of their party. Don't do this to us again. Don't nominate somebody who's even going to visit us. Don't nominate somebody who won't even go to Wisconsin. Do not insult us again. We've been insulted for too long. I saw that commercial, this new commercial for one of the other candidates, that I'm the safe choice. Play it safe with me and we'll beat Trump. Vote for me because is that the best? The best anybody could say about themselves is that I'm safe? I'm seriously, I mean, if you were on Match.com and you saw some guy on his profile had written, I'm safe, the first thought would be, the hell you are. That's the creepiest thing I've ever read on a profile. I'm safe. We're tired of playing it safe. What has it gotten us? No increase in people's wages in 30 plus years? Almost 40 now since the era of Reagan. Where has it gotten us by playing it safe? Nowhere. In fact, we're worse off. We're worse off because we were convinced, well, the only way we can beat Reagan in 84 is vote the safe choice. Vote the safe. So we voted safe, didn't we? We voted safe in 84. The young people don't know who I'm talking about. The rest of you do. Right? Just think, we visited the home of Wonder Bread down in Waterloo yesterday. So just think Wonder Bread. Safe. The safe bread. Wonder Bread. With free mayonnaise. No, it's like, in 88, we were told, play it safe again. I remember this because Jesse Jackson won the Michigan primary in 88. No, Jackson will lose. Don't vote for him. Vote for the safe choice. A helmet and a tank. Oh, cute. In 2000, we were told to vote for the safe choice. Vote for it, yes, and we got the most votes. Yeah, except we didn't. What didn't we do? We won the popular vote. We should have started the day after the election getting rid of the Electoral College. And we didn't. Do you think if the Republicans had won the popular vote, they just would have sat back and go, oh, no. Again, there is the Electoral College, and, we're such strict constitutionalists. Right. We did nothing. We did nothing about this. So 16 years, it comes back to bite us when we win by 3 million votes. But we didn't do anything about it after 2000. And once again, in 16, we were told to go the safe route. Go the safe route. Pick the safe candidate. We need to win. We have to win. And, of course, many people arrogantly thought, Trump, are you kidding? That's like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, that's nothing. We could pitch strikes blindfolded. Right? There's no way America's going to vote for him. Took it for granted. Went with a safe choice. My friends, we all know by now, safe loses. Safe loses. And if you're a candidate who voted for the Iraq war to send our sons and daughters over there to invade a country that had nothing to do with 9/11, a country that had never, ever done anything to kill us, to invade us, to bomb us, and we gave up 4,800 lives for that? Who would ever vote for somebody? Well, I did. I voted for Kerry. I voted for Hillary. How many more times are we going to be asked to vote for somebody who didn't know that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld were up to no good? You can't do that. I actually love Joe Biden. I know him. He's really a good guy. He really is a good guy. But when I heard him say this week, well, Bush told me, you know, he wasn't really going to invade. He just wanted to use it, to threaten, to have the power. Right? Well, okay, I understand people get fooled. But if you're asking me to vote for you for president of the United States, I need somebody who does not get fooled by an idiot like George W. Bush. This is not the time that's why it's packed in here tonight. None of us are into safe. Here's what we're into. We're into voting for the one candidate who is going to be the Trump stopper. He's the Trump stopper, and his name is Bernie Sanders. Trump stopper. Every head-to-head poll that they've been conducting lately shows of the 4 or 5 or 7 candidates, the number one candidate, when they say to people, if you had the choice between Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, who would you vote for? Bernie Sanders. Like the last one I saw by like 9 points. That's who I want. If, as what they say is true, that our number one goal in this election is to remove Trump. We have many other goals, but remove Trump. Well, then that one's a no-brainer. I want to tell you something. We were filming in West Virginia, and the Democrats down there, a few months after the 2016 election, sometime in 2017, they decided that they just wanted to find out, what if it hadn't been Clinton-Trump? What if it had been Bernie Sanders versus Trump in West Virginia? Now, West Virginia is the state that Trump won by the largest margin. 68% in West Virginia voted for Trump. And I think it was 28, 29% for Hillary. So that is a red Trump state. But they conducted this poll anyways. They wanted to find out if the ballot had read, and this is not, people are not answering this question now 3 months or 3 years after suffering through Trump. This is, I don't know, 6 to 8 months, something like that. And I'm going to tell you what the results were. This has been published. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but you don't hear this in the media. 68% for Trump, 28, 29 for Hillary. So it was in the later 20s, somewhere in there. Bernie versus Trump. Here's what the poll said. Had that been the ballot, 48% for Bernie Sanders, 46% for Donald Trump. That's West Virginia. That's Trump's strongest state. 48-46. Unbelievable. Bernie, we lost because of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Bernie won Michigan. Bernie won Wisconsin. Forget about now the nationwide polling. We need to be focused on these states where it's going to come down to it. And in these states, people love Bernie. I said this on TV last week. Do you realize Bernie won every northern state that borders Canada? And in the primary. I'm talking about Montana, Idaho, Washington, Minnesota, North Dakota, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York were the only two that Bernie, well, Pennsylvania doesn't touch Canada. That's right. So only New York. He won Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine. He won 4 of the 6 New England states. He won 4 of the 5 states that touch the Pacific Ocean in the primaries. This whole thing about, well, I like Bernie, but I don't know, can he win? That's been settled. And it really, you know who's really settled it finally? Yesterday was Lev Parnas. You know Lev, of Lev and Igor fame. He taped his phone calls with Trump. Did you hear the tape today? If you haven't heard it, go online. Lev Parnas and Trump are talking. And Trump is scared of Bernie. Trump says to Parnas, and I believe Giuliani, Trump says, and he's on, you can hear Trump's voice say this. He said, I was afraid, I won't do Trump's voice. I was afraid, you've heard it enough. I was afraid that Hillary was going to pick Bernie as her running mate. And I was so relieved that she didn't, because that would have been a tough one. He's the only one I didn't want to see on that ballot, on that ticket, was Bernie Sanders. What does that tell you? No, my friends, we are the Trump stoppers. In Iowa, you are the Trump stopper. It stops here, right here. The starting of the stopping starts right here in Iowa. You have to do this. You have to do this. Bernie and I, Michigan and Vermont, we share a border with Canada. Canada from Detroit's a half mile across the river. In Vermont, it's just 2 trees. When we say we can see Canada from our front porch, it's actually true. And let me tell you something. This is what we also share, because we're so close to Canada. We see that just a half a mile from us, how many Canadians lose their home or go bankrupt because they don't have health care? None. If you get sick in Canada, you get to see a doctor. You get to go to the hospital. You get help. We look across into Canada. We don't see young people with student debt that they have for the next 20 or 30 years, where they're in a debtor's prison. That just doesn't happen. We look across and we see Canada, and we see a nation that per capita actually has more guns than we have in their homes, because the number 1 sport in Canada is hunting. There are more people in Canada who hunt than play hockey. Yes. There are something like 7 million guns in Canadians' homes. And how many people of each other, how many fellow Canadians do they kill every year? Hardly any. 100, maybe in a nation of 34 million people, 100. We can do that in a day with a couple of mass shootings. Why don't they kill each other? They're not better than us. They have the same 23 chromosomes in their cells. Their kids watch the same violent movies. Why don't they kill each other? The CD, well, because I have my own theory about this. I made a movie about it. I think it's because the Canadian people organize themselves around the concept of we. And we organize our concept around the idea of me. Me, myself, and I. The Canadians feel like if there's 10 people that don't have health care, that means none of us have health care. That's the way Canadians look at it. I'm telling you, my friends, we're not free as long as we have the possibility of dying because we can't afford to see a doctor. We don't live in the land of the free. As long as we send our 22-year-olds into a debtor's prison, we're not free. As long as somebody couldn't come to this rally tonight because they can't afford child care, we're not free. We are the land of the free. We need to start acting like it by being the home of the brave. Every one of us has a job to do. All of you have a job to do on February 3rd. You have to be brave. You have to bring 10 people with you to the caucus. We have to make this happen. I implore you on behalf of the other 49 states, we can't take this anymore. Let the people of Michigan come and vote. with pride this year. Please, please support and do whatever you can to help Senator Bernie Sanders in this election. And now, I want to bring out on the stage one of my personal heroes, somebody who did something a little over a year and really just 3 months ago. She had no money. She thought she could run for Congress and win. She thought that she could run against the member of Congress in her district in New York City that had been there for a long time and was now the fourth most powerful Democrat in the U.S. Congress. And she pulled this off in such a marvelous, wonderful way. And what she really did was to let you and I know that if you're thinking of running for office, whether it's city council or school board or state rep or senate or even the United States Congress, you should never say to yourself, oh, there's no way I could do that. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough whatever. She did this in a very political city with a ton of money. And she did this. And if she can do it, you can do it. If you're a young woman, we need you in office. You're the majority gender, and you hold a minority of the offices. You have to do this. And I want you to welcome her here to Sioux City, Iowa. I did not give her one of my donuts. I feel awful about this. Nonetheless, please give her this warm welcome. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOL.
Tú nos dices que debemos sentarnos, pero las ideas solo pueden levantarnos, caminar, recorrer, no rendirse ni retroceder, ver, aprender como esponja, absorber. Nadie sobre todos, faltan todos, suman todos para todos. Soñamos en grande que se pega el imperio, lo gritamos algo, no queda más remedio.
Let's hear it, Iowa! What's up? We got 8 days left! We have 8 days left. We need all this energy up tonight. We need all this energy up tomorrow. And we need all this energy for the next week to come because we're going to take Iowa, guys. That's what we're here to do. We're here to take Iowa and to make sure and recenter politics for the working class in the United States of America. We're here to assert and advance a suite of 21st century economic, social, and human rights in this country. That's what we're here to do. And, you know, I've been thinking about a lot of what I've seen in Iowa in the last few days and a lot of what I've experienced in my community in the last year. And I'm like catching my breath. And I want us to really refocus and remember what this campaign is all about. Because when we talk about a movement for working people in this country, what we mean is a movement for working power in this country. For that, so that working class Americans have power in our electoral system and our democracy once again. Michael kind of alluded a little bit to my story, but I want us to remember who this campaign is by and who this campaign is for, because I think something that gets lost, and I was talking to the senator backstage, to Bernie last behind here and backstage, is that this campaign is by working people, and that's honestly what makes Bernie different. It makes a lot of us different because we end up, being in politics, being in a place where working people usually aren't. I'm the daughter of a domestic worker. My mom cleaned houses growing up. And as a kid, I would go with my mom to clean homes. And I would, I would get out of school, and sometimes she would take me to clean, as she cleaned other people's homes. And I would do my homework on other people's kitchen tables. And I would read books on other people's staircases, trying to do my best in school because I felt like doing well in school was the best way that I could pay her back for all the sacrifices she made in my life so that I could have a chance. And even in high school, my mom cleaned an English teacher's house for free so that I could have SAT lessons, so that she could give me SAT lessons. And I had my first job when I was about 14 or 15. I worked at an Irish pub. I was a hostess at an Irish pub. Won't say which one because they paid me under the table. And, I think it's, having that experience like that, that's where I first learned how to pour a Guinness. And none of this was supposed to happen. Whoa. Wow, this got very dramatic. I had guidance counselors tell me that I shouldn't apply to the college that I ended up getting into because I wasn't going to get in. And I was always kind of surrounded in environments where working people aren't supposed to be. And Capitol Hill is probably one of the most ultimate places where working people aren't. When I ran my race, I was running in a primary election, and I had to make a case as to why Democrats could be better. And I had to make a case to my community as to why after 20 years of the same representation, they should take a risk on a waitress. Honestly, it felt impossible. But we did it. We did it. And I think sometimes, whether it's for the convenience, out of convenience or something else, I think a lot of people forget or don't tell the story that I won my seat on the case that the Democratic Party could be better. I won my seat on that case. And I think that it can be better. Not only that it can be, but that it must be in order for us to win elections. It must be better. And I think when people say, is it about better policy or is it about electability? I truly feel like the better policy is how we get elected to office. It's how we get elected to office. Bernie, you know what his dad did? His dad was a paint salesman. He grew up in Brooklyn, and we'll forgive him for that because I'm from the Bronx. And he grew up, I believe, in rent-controlled or rent-stabilized housing, so he didn't have to fear displacement. That story is very different in New York City today. People are terrified if at the end of the month, if they're going to be able to make rent or make their mortgage. And as people are getting priced out right now in New York City, we have the largest population of people experiencing homelessness since the Great Depression. Yet, there are so many luxury apartments that are being used as parking lots for people to hide their wealth. So much so that 1 out of every 4 luxury apartments in New York City is empty. It goes unsold. And for every 1 person that is experiencing homelessness in New York City, about 3 luxury apartments lay empty. This is the crisis that we have right now. Our system and our economic system and our current state of inequality is fraying, and it's starting to crack. And it has not gotten better since we have elected this fraud to the White House. It has not. And while we get sold bogus tax cuts, and while we get sold one kind of ridiculous policy after another in this administration, what is happening is that it's all getting worse. After an unprecedented $2 trillion tax cut by the Republican Party, have we learned? We have learned that while they said they were going to create jobs with that, What did they do? Put it in stock buybacks so that their CEOs can make higher pay. This economy is not working for us because we are measuring success in the forms of stock prices and in terms of GDP, and we're not measuring success in terms of wages and well-being, and we need to. And that's what this campaign is all about. But something that I think is very important for us to recall or remember is that this campaign, Bernie's campaign, has deep roots. Roots far into the ground, into a movement and a multiracial movement of class solidarity in the United States. Deep roots. Deep roots. And that matters. That matters. Because politics, unfortunately, can be a lot like pop music in a bad way, in that people are trying to reinvent themselves every 4 years. And commitment really matters when you're trying to fight for working people. It really matters, because a lack of commitment is almost easier. If you're advocating on the side of lobbyists, it's like, whatever, cut the check, and cast the vote. But when you are fighting against the grain in the concentration of power, you need to be committed. And you look that lion right in the mouth in all of the fear and be willing to put your career on the line over and over again for the most marginalized, whose rights are most controversial. And Senator Bernie Sanders has done that his whole life. His whole life. And that matters, because when we talk about how this president divides us up by race and gender, etc., he does it by preying on the most marginalized people. You think it's an accident that he focuses on immigrants so much? It's not. It's because immigrants are some of the most vulnerable people in the United States right now. He knows that politically, or he sensed that politically there wouldn't be enough people willing to stand up for our immigrant brothers and sisters in the United States. And because of that, it could be considered a wedge issue, an area to divide people up. And so when we talk about winning, it's not just about winning, it's about healing. And requiring us, when we talk about fighting for someone that we don't know, it means fighting for the least of us. The least of us. Yesterday, I believe it was in Cedar Falls, this woman stood up, and honestly, I can't even imagine, the amount of courage it takes to stand up in front of an entire room and to say, my paycheck is being garnished right now because of medical bills. She stood up and shared that and trusted that with the whole room. We need to fight for her. All of us need to fight for her. I heard testimony of an incredible story yesterday in Marshalltown, where ICE had come in and raided a meatpacking factory. And as that raid was coming in, and as this community was getting torn apart with this intimidation, people started sending texts, don't go in there, they're there, etc. But this one mother who's always contributing to her church, always contributing to her communities, she was detained. 250 people in Marshalltown wrote letters and organized to keep her here, and she won her case. We need to fight for her. We need to fight for her. When there were folks who were working in Walmart getting paid far less than a living wage, and when that happens, we all know what happens. You don't work a 40-hour work week, you work 80, 100-hour work weeks. We need to fight for them. We need to fight for them. When people are unjustly targeted in our system of mass incarceration, we need to fight for them. And that means standing up to powerful rhetoric, powerful, hateful rhetoric is what we are up against, which means we have to reject outright the notion that any class of people are inherently dangerous or less than. Whether you are poor, whether you are immigrant, whether you are black, whether you are native. And Senator Sanders has done that his entire life. When people weren't looking, he was at Standing Rock. When people weren't looking, he stood up against fracking and pipelines because he knew it went into the poorest and worst communities. When no one was looking, he stood up to industries and to the concentration of power in agriculture where everyday working people were being abused so that someone else could get a profit margin. He has stood up for the least of us. And even to this day, in this race, he's the only candidate who stood up to say, we're going to break up ICE and CBP. To this day. And I can tell you, when you go to Washington, D.C., that is not easy. It is not easy. Because what everyone tells you is that don't make the perfect the enemy of the good in legislating. Everyone says that. But too often it's used as an excuse. Because sometimes they'll say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, when they're really talking about bad legislation. And they'll say, well, it's not perfect, but what if it hurts people? And the problem is that when we're so removed, when you're in that bubble, we talk about DC, I call it the upside down. Because all of a sudden, you show up and you're like, well, this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do. And people will come up with all sorts of backwards rationales, like, it's like that meme with the guy with the red string all over the place, like, this is why you should vote for a tax cut. And it's like that kind of, that crazy rationale. But usually, if it doesn't pass the smell test, we should not do it. But too often, how things work in DC is that everyone kind of goes along. And a lot of it is tied to money in politics. And right now, we are in a revolution in how campaigns are financed. That revolution was led by Senator Sanders, first and foremost. OG, like he's the OG, right, on that. But deeper than that is that now doing so is much easier. Thankfully for the progressive movement, being a people-powered campaign is much easier now due to the internet. He was doing that long before it was easy. And he was doing all this stuff long before it was easy, fighting for a woman's right to choose before it was easy. He's done this. He has done this shoulder to shoulder in movement to center working people, doing it when it's hard, doing it when no one was paying attention. That is what he has done. And I think that it's important. I think that it's important to recognize that. And I also think it's important to recognize that among all of us, especially all of us young folks in the room, I think it's really important for us to recognize all of our elders right now that have been holding down this fight, waiting for us to show up, fighting for our future. So let's do that. I want to thank our elders and thank our seniors who have been fighting for what's right, holding it down, waiting for this moment. And we need to bring it home for them and for all of us and for working people in the United States of America. And that's exactly what we're here to do. That's exactly what we're here to do. So I want to thank you all again. I'm going to bring on the senator. I've had the bad habit earlier today of I've been just like handing it over, and he's like in a room, so he has to come over. So, but this is our moment. This is our shot. And so what we need to do is make sure that we actually translate this energy into the caucus. And one thing about that too, in talking about that commitment to the marginalized, you know what this campaign has done behind the scenes? They have worked to add tons of caucusing sites in marginalized communities this year. Tons. So we now have caucusing. They have fought to put caucusing sites. This campaign and this movement has fought to put caucusing sites in mosques, in Latino communities, in rural communities. Because what we're here to do is dramatically expand the electorate. We're not just voting, we're not just here to win with the same tiny slice of people anymore. We're going to win by expanding and growing that electorate. And we know as organizers that we have the possibility and the capacity to do that. When I ran in my congressional race, how I thought about it was the incumbent has this many votes. I'm not going to try to get their votes. I'm going to find more votes somewhere else. And that's what we're here to do. As a result, in our primary back in New York, we expanded the electorate 68% over the last off-year midterm primary election. 68%. The number of voters under 40 matched those above 60. That's what we need to do here and elsewhere. And it's not just as a matter of a path to victory. This is our path to democracy. That's what this is about, a path to democracy. Because our election shouldn't be determined by the few, whether it's in money in politics or by a depressed voter turnout. We have to work to reestablish, reaffirm, and expand democracy in the United States of America. So if you're under 40 years old, it's time to turn it out and show up. And if you've been around the block, please show us how. Raise your hand if this might be your first caucus. There we go. Look at all these first caucus attendees out here. This is fabulous. And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to make sure that we get those numbers up, that we make sure that we expand this electorate, and it needs to be welcome. It needs to be fundamentally affirming. And we need to make sure that we are fighting for someone we don't know. That's what this campaign is about. So with that, I'd like to make sure that I believe we should have him here now, so I'm not doing it too early. So with that, everyone, the man of the hour, Senator Bernie Sanders. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people now. Say we want a revolution. We better get on right away. Sioux City, thank you. Whoa. What a fantastic turnout. Thank you all very much for coming out. And when I look at the size of this crowd, I am absolutely convinced that a week from Monday we make history, we win the Iowa caucus. Let me begin by thanking Michael Moore. I want you to know what you already know, that Michael is one of the great filmmakers in the modern history of this country. He has taken film in a direction that very, very few directors have gone. He has raised issues which the corporate media chooses not to deal with. He has taken on powerful special interest that the vast majority of filmmakers will never go near. So I just want to thank Michael for the extraordinary work he has done and for his help in this campaign. And what can we say about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Let me just say, I've been in Congress for a few years, more than a few years, and I cannot recall any single first-term member of Congress having more of an impact on American society
that has Alexandria. She is inspiring working people and young people and people of color and women all across this country. She is getting people involved in the political process who have never been involved. There is nothing more important than that. Alexandria, thank you for all that you're doing. Now, I think all of you know that my day job is being a United States Senator from the great state of Vermont. Thank you. And in the capacity of being a United States Senator, I am exercising my constitutional responsibility of being a juror in the impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump. So what that means is that tonight I will be on a plane going back to D.C. Tomorrow I will be listening and participating in the impeachment process, and we're doing that on Tuesday. We're doing that on Wednesday. We're doing that on Thursday. And the truth is, nobody really knows the schedule, but I suspect it will go on for much of the week. We will try, and what I want to say is that the campaign schedule that we had originally designed had us here in Iowa this whole week doing 3 or 4 events every single day, getting all over the state. Well, I can't do that now because I got a constitutional responsibility, and unlike the President of the United States, I actually believe in the Constitution. So I'm going to do my job, which means that I will not be here in Iowa as often in the coming 8 days as I would like. And in that regard, what I want to say, and why I believe we're going to win, is that we have put together in this state the most extraordinary grassroots movement that I think Iowa has ever seen. We have, and I want to thank all of you and people who are not here, people all over this state, for going out on bitter cold days and nights and knocking on doors. We have knocked on many, many hundreds of thousands of doors. That's what we do. Alexandria has talked about a grassroots movement that is exactly what we are doing right here in Iowa. And at the end of the day, and this is what I have believed my whole political life, is TV ads are important, and we're doing them. Radio ads are important. Newspaper ads are important. All that stuff is important. But at the end of the day, what is most important is person-to-person contact. What is most important is saying hello to your neighbor, to your coworker, to your friend, and say, you know what? This is why I'm supporting Bernie Sanders. Ask me any question that you want. Let's discuss what's going on in America. Let's discuss where we have got to go from here. And don't complain. Come out and vote on caucus night. And we're going to win this because there is no campaign that is mounting the kind of grassroots movement that we here are doing in Iowa. We're doing the same thing in New Hampshire. We're doing it in Nevada. We're doing it in South Carolina. We're doing it in California. We are mounting this grassroots, unprecedented, multi-generational, multi-racial movement in a way nobody has ever seen. So that's why I am feeling good. I am feeling good about Iowa, and I'm feeling good about other states. And you can tell how good I feel by how nervous the establishment is getting. Suddenly, Donald Trump is talking about our campaign. Suddenly, the Republican National Committee is tweeting about our campaign. Suddenly, we have the Democratic establishment very nervous about this campaign. We got Wall Street nervous. We got the insurance companies nervous. We got the drug companies nervous. We got the fossil fuel industry nervous. We got the military-industrial complex nervous. We got the prison-industrial complex nervous. We got billionaires going on television crying that they're going to have to start paying their fair share of taxes. And they're starting to think, could this really happen? Could there really be a political movement in America which brings together blacks and whites and Latinos and Asian Americans and Native Americans, gay and straight, to stand up as working class people fighting for change? We are their worst nightmare. This is their nightmare on Elm Street. And the reason we're going to win is not only that we're bringing people together. It's not only that we have an unprecedented grassroots movement. I'll give you one example. I don't want to put too much emphasis on it, but I want to give you just one example. All of you know that what politics used to be about is establishment candidates representing the wealthy and the powerful will say they're running for office. Then they go to rich people's homes and they raise all kinds of money, and that would be their campaign. They get to hire these consultants to put TV ads on, and that's that. By the way, we don't have any consultants on our TV ads. We're doing it in-house, just to pass. That's the way it used to be. We have changed the rules of the game. We have revolutionized how campaigns are funded, and I am enormously proud to tell you, not only that we have so many people knocking on doors, that's extraordinary, but to fund our campaign, we don't have a super PAC. We don't go to rich people's homes to raise money. What we have seen happen in this campaign is we have raised more campaign contributions from more Americans, averaging $18 a contribution, than any candidate in the history of the United States of America. So we don't need billionaires' money. We don't need a super PAC. We are being funded by the working families of this country. You know what profession, as it happens, is the major source of our funding, where we get more money from any other profession? It's God, you knew that. Thank you, teachers. And we helped workers at Amazon get a $15 an hour minimum wage. And Amazon workers are contributing to our campaign. Disney workers are contributing to our campaign. So that is something that I'm just very, very proud of. So we're going to win because we have very strong grassroots support, not only here in Iowa, not only in New Hampshire, but all across this country. But the second reason we're going to win is we have the agenda that is the agenda of the working families of this country, an agenda that says we are prepared to stand up to the greed and corruption of the corporate elite. And what our agenda is about is not complicated. You know, you just think about what we need to do in this country, and that's what our agenda is. Here in Iowa, I have talked to countless people who are earning starvation wages, and that's just a fact. Talked to a woman in Des Moines not so long ago making $10.15 an hour, raising 3 kids. Can't raise 3 kids on $10.15 an hour. You can't raise a family on $11 or $12 an hour. And that is why we believe that in the United States of America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty. We're going to raise that federal minimum wage $15 an hour. What we believe is grossly unfair that women in America earn 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Equal pay for equal work. I have perhaps the strongest lifetime pro-union voting record in the United States Congress. I have walked on picket lines for 30 years. That's what I do. And I believe that as president, what we will do is make it easier for workers to join unions so that at the end of 4 years, we're going to double union membership in America. Everybody in America who gets into their car knows that we have an infrastructure which is crumbling. Everybody knows that. Our roads and our bridges, water systems, wastewater plants. We lack affordable housing in America. We have schools that are falling apart. That is why what we will do is invest heavily in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure and create millions of good-paying union jobs when we do that. When you talk about an agenda that works for working people, that means you have to rethink the way we do education in America. That means we need in America universal, high-quality, affordable child care for every working family in this country. It means that instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we're going to greatly expand funding for low-income Title I schools in America, triple funding. Because we believe that all kids in this country deserve a quality education regardless of the zip code and the community that you live in. And when we talk about education, and these are not radical ideas, you know, sometimes my opponents say Bernie is an extremist, he's so radical. None of this stuff is radical. It is not radical to say that in America, every kid who has the ability and the desire, regardless of his or her income, should be able to get a higher education. Not a radical idea. And what that means is we will make public colleges and universities tuition free. And when you think big and not small, and when you begin to think about what a government can do that represents working families, ask yourself, how could it happen that 12 years ago, Congress, against my vote, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street whose illegal behavior nearly destroyed our economy? They got a bailout. They got trillions of dollars of zero-interest loans. How could it be that 2 years ago, amidst massive income and wealth inequality, where 3 people now own more wealth than the bottom half of America, Congress under Trump gave the 1% and large profitable corporations $1 trillion in tax breaks? Well, if Congress can give $1 trillion in tax breaks to people who don't need it, so that Amazon, a massively profitable corporation owned by the wealthiest guy in America, ends up not paying a nickel in federal income tax, If we can give tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations, you know what we can do? We can cancel all student debt in America. My point that I'm making here, the point that I want to make is, despite what my critics will tell you, none of this stuff is radical. None of it is extreme. This is simply an agenda that works for working families, not the 1%. You want to know radical? Radical is giving tax breaks to billionaires. Radical is bailing out crooks on Wall Street. Radical is putting hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies and tax breaks for the fossil fuel industry while they destroy the planet. That's radical. And I'll tell you what else is not radical. For over 100 years in America, we have had presidents going way back to Teddy Roosevelt, going to FDR, going to Harry Truman, going to Lyndon Johnson, going to Barack Obama, going to other presidents who have said that all Americans are entitled to health care. That is not a radical idea. All of you know we are the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people. We are the only one. And yet, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as do the countries in Europe or Canada. We're spending $11,000 for every man, woman, and child. So let me be very clear. The function of a rational and humane healthcare system is not to make insurance companies and drug companies rich. It is to provide quality care for all. And that is why, after 100 years of talk, our administration will lead this country forward to a Medicare for all single-payer program. We will end the absurdity. We will end the absurdity of spending twice as much as any other country and yet have 87 million Americans uninsured or underinsured. And by underinsured, many of you have $5,000 deductible, $10,000 deductible. You're asked to pay a whole lot of money out of pocket that you cannot afford to pay. 30,000 people in America every year die because they don't get to a doctor on time. Furthermore, what is really also incredibly cruel, and I want you to think about it and understand how dysfunctional and cruel this system is. Some 500,000 Americans each year go bankrupt because of medically related debt. What that means in English, now I want you to think about this. Somebody goes to the doctor, they get diagnosed with cancer. Person has got to think, okay, what doctor will I go to? What kind of treatment? What kind of medicine do they need? They're fighting for their lives, and then in the midst of all of this, their families are facing financial ruin. In America, under our healthcare system, people will not suffer financial ruin because they've been diagnosed with cancer or heart disease or Alzheimer's. That is a disgrace. That is an absolute disgrace. Should not be happening in America. What Medicare for all means is we're going to end, and again, this is not a radical idea. It exists in virtually every other major country. We're going to end all premiums. No one's going to have to pay $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month. Gone. We're going to end co-payments so you don't have to come up with $50 or $100 when you go to the doctor's office. And if you don't have that $100, you can't go to the doctor. We're going to end the insane concept of deductible. We're going to end out-of-pocket expenses. And the other thing we're going to do is we're building on the most popular health insurance program in America today, which is Medicare. Medicare is a strong program, but it's not strong enough. So what we do is expand Medicare to cover dental care, to cover hearing aids, to cover eyeglasses, and to also cover home health care so people could stay at home, not be forced into a nursing home. Now, people say to me, well, Bernie, how are you going to fund it? And that's a fair question. And I say to them, tell me about how we fund the current dysfunctional system. Tell me if you think it's right that people are paying $1,000 a month for premiums. Tell me if you think it's right that people have to fork out the first $5,000 or $10,000 of health care bills because of their deductibles. Tell me if you think it's right that we pay, in some cases, 10 times more for the prescription drugs we need than people in other countries for the same exact medicine. So we have a mechanism to fund Medicare for all. We have a number of options out there. But the bottom line is that after we eliminate premiums, out-of-pocket expenses, co-payments, and deductibles, and after we take on the drug companies so that nobody in America will have to pay more than $200 a year for their prescription drugs, after all of that, the average working family will pay substantially less for comprehensive health care than they're paying today. I want to touch on another subject which is of enormous consequence, and that is we have a president who, for the first time, I guess, in American history, rejects science. I don't know quite how you can help run a country when you don't believe in science. And what this president believes is that climate change is not real. This president is dangerously, dangerously wrong and is endangering the well-being of our kids and future generations. So let me make a not-so-radical promise to you. You ready for a not-so-radical promise? I believe in science. And we will listen to the scientists. And here's what the scientists are telling us. What they are telling us is not just that climate change is, of course, real. Everybody except Donald Trump knows that. And not just that it is caused by human behavior and carbon emissions. Everybody knows that. And not just that it is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. Everybody who has eyes knows that. This is what they are telling us that is scary. What they are telling us is they have underestimated the speed and severity in which climate change is wreaking havoc on our country and the world. They underestimated the speed in which the polar ice caps are melting and the oceans are warming, which means rising sea levels all over the world, which, if we don't get a handle on this, will mean major American cities and countries all over the world inundated. All right? What they have underestimated is the severity of the drought that we will be experiencing, which means that here in Iowa, your farmers will have a shorter growing season, and the nutritional quality of the food they produce will, in fact, deteriorate. And when we talk about drought, take a look at the horror show that is now taking place in the beautiful country of Australia, which is on fire. Take a look at what happened in California over the last year. And what the scientists are telling us, this is what will increasingly happen if we do not act. And what they are telling us is that if we don't act boldly, more extreme weather disturbances. A couple of months ago, beautiful city of Venice, Italy, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, underwater. Houston, Texas, underwater because of unprecedented torrential rainfall. Puerto Rico disaster. And on it goes. We know that. What they are saying is expect more and more of that. And what the United Nations is telling us is that there will be up to hundreds of millions of climate refugees. You know what that means? That means people who can no longer live in their communities because there's no water to drink, no land to grow the food that they need. They will migrate. And when millions of people migrate, you create enormous international tension and the likelihood of more wars. That is what the scientists are telling us. I have been criticized because I have introduced the most comprehensive and sweeping climate change proposal ever introduced by any candidate running for president. It is a proposal based on the principles of the Green New Deal. It is a proposal which tells the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of our planet. It is a proposal that says as quickly as we humanly can, we're going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And I want to congratulate the people of Iowa. You are one of the leaders in this country on wind energy. Congratulations. But we have got to multiply the energy production of sustainable energy many, many times over. The Green New Deal, as we transform our energy system, can create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. But what makes this issue even more complicated than it already is that this is not just an American issue. This is a planetary issue. And as President of the United States, what I see my job as is reaching out to people all over the world, to the people in China, which is right now suffering massive pollution problems. People in India, massive pollution problems. Pakistan, Brazil, countries all over the world, and say to those people, maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons designed to kill each other, why don't we pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change? This is an issue. I am a father of 4 and a grandfather of 7 beautiful kids. This is an issue we cannot run away from. We cannot deny it. We have got to confront it, and we have the capability. We have the scientists. We have the energy. We have the skilled workforce in this country to lead the world in transforming our global energy system and saving the planet. That is our moral necessity. And when we talk about a moral agenda, we are talking about the need to fundamentally reform a broken and racist criminal justice system. This is the richest country in the world. We should not have more people in jail than any other country, including communist China, 4 times our size. What we will be doing, what our administration will do, working with some of the best expertise in the country, is we will be investing in our young people in jobs and education rather than jails and incarceration. We are going to end private prisons and detention centers in America because corporations should not make money locking up fellow Americans. And brothers and sisters, not everybody may agree with me, but what I believe is the time is long overdue to end the so-called war on drugs. This is a war which has disproportionately impacted the African American community, the Latino community, the Native American community. And what we have got to do is finally legalize marijuana in every state in this country. And that a president of the United States can do through executive order. That is an executive order that I will promulgate. Just out of curiosity, I got a question. How many people here know of someone who was arrested for possession of marijuana? Please raise your hand. This is why we have to end the war on drugs. Do you see that number of hands going here? So what we are going to do is not only legalize marijuana in every state, we're going to expunge the records of those who have been arrested for possession of marijuana. And when we talk about reforming broken systems, at the top of our list has got to be fundamental reform of a broken immigration system. On my first day in office, through executive order, we will repeal all of Trump's racist immigration executive orders. We will restore the legal status of the 1.8 million young people and their parents eligible for the DACA program. We will fundamentally change our border policies so that federal agents will never again, in your name, snatch babies from the arms of their mothers. And when we talk about issues that impact all of us, whether we're conservative, progressive, Republican, Democrat, all of us get sickened when we turn on the TV and learn about another mass shooting and understand how many people are killed every year because of gun violence. So let me simply say this. Our gun policy will be determined by the American people, not the NRA. And that means universal background checks. That means ending the gun show loophole. That means ending the so-called straw man provision. And what that also means, and where the American people are now, is understanding that we've got to end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in America. You know, as a United States Senator, I hear a lot of speeches on the floor of the Senate from my conservative Republican colleagues. And very often their mantra is about small government. They believe in small government. They believe in getting the government off the backs of the American. They believe in freedom. You do what you want to do. Well, if you believe in freedom, if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the people, please understand that it is women in this country who have the right to control their bodies, not politicians. So my promise to you is we will move forward to codify Roe v. Wade into legislation, that I will never nominate anybody to the Supreme Court or the federal bench who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. So there are a lot of issues that are out there, more that I haven't discussed. But we are where we are right now in 2020, which is the year that will hold the most consequential election in the modern history of this country, or perhaps the history of America. This is an election which will determine whether we become an autocratic society with a president who believes he is above the law and above the Constitution, or whether we move forward to create a vibrant democracy of one person, one vote. This is an election which says we will continue a dysfunctional and cruel healthcare system, or create a healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people as a human right. This is an election which will either turn its back on the existential crisis of climate change, or be an election in which the United States leads the world in combating climate change. So this is an enormously consequential election, and it all begins in Iowa a week from tomorrow. Now, I have been all over the state. We've had about 100 meetings like this, and I have been deeply impressed by how seriously the people of Iowa accept their unique responsibility of going first. I know that many of you have gone to many meetings, not just here, you've heard from other candidates. You're trying to assess which candidate is best for you and best for the country. Well, and I appreciate that. No, I appreciate you're taking your responsibility seriously, and the country, I think, is proud of how you are doing that. My plea to you, my humble request, is that a week from tomorrow night, you come out to caucus, and as Alexandria said, bring your friends, bring your family, bring as many people as you can. Because if we win here in Iowa, and with your help, we have an excellent chance to win here in Iowa, we'll win in New Hampshire. And if we win in New Hampshire, we're going to win in Nevada. And if we win in Nevada, we're going to do damn well in South Carolina, we're going to win in California. In other words, it all starts here a week from Monday night. So I am asking for your support, and let me just wrap it up by saying this. We will very early in the evening know exactly what is going to happen. If the voter turnout is small and low, we lose. If the voter turnout is high, we're going to win. Because what Michael Moore and Alexandria were talking about is what our campaign is reaching out to new voters, to working class people who have given up on the political process, to Latino voters who may not have voted in the past, to young people who for the first time are going to get engaged in the electoral system. If the voter turnout is high, we win. My plea to you is let us, a week from tomorrow night, have the largest voter turnout in Iowa caucus history. Thank you all very much.
you.